quick little video on tricep pushdowns. Going to talk some technique tweaks, specifically things you want to watch out for in terms of compensations. You can use a rope or you can use a band. I prefer the band. It just seems to feel a little bit better on my elbows in the long run. So specifically, the one thing that you want to watch out for is in reference to the long head of the tricep. So the long head attaches at the ulcranium process, that point on your elbow, but it also attaches on the glenoid, or the rim of the glenoid on your scapula. So that's basically just the socket in which the ball from your upper arm, or the humerus, sits in. So, getting the anatomy out of the way, what's important to understand is that it not only attaches at the humerus, but then it also attaches at the scapula, and thus it's one of 17 or 18 muscles, I believe, that attach to the scapula and can influence its position within all three planes. So, if we think about the tricep extension, we're working the lateral head, which is obviously what most folks are flexing when they're looking into a mirror, or we're also looking at the long head here on the back side of the arm. So what you want to be careful of or to watch for is that as you extend down, you don't default into scapular anterior tilt. So this can be a problem for a couple of reasons. The first, in that as you come down into that tilt, what can happen is that the humerus can actually glide forward in the socket, known as anterior humeral glide. Basically all that means is the head of your humerus here is being pushed forward in the socket, and it stretches out the anterior capsule. So similar to your hips, your shoulders have this shrink wrap around it, essentially, which is the capsule itself, and over time that can get stretched out. So what you want to watch for is just make sure that as you're extending down, you don't have to keep the shoulder blades retracted necessarily, but you want to make sure that you don't default into that anterior tilted position. So you'll see people when they get sloppy, as they get fatigued obviously, but as they go to push down, they'll lean into it and they'll resemble this in the bottom. So you're still going to get obviously tricep activation because you're extending the elbow, so it has to work. But at the same time, you don't want to be training in these compensatory patterns, because then you're teaching yourself to adapt those new positions. So in the case of the shoulder, what you may find is that then as you're going to lock out here on a bench press or on a close grip press, that you may fall into more of that anterior tilt. So it's not necessarily an issue with cueing yourself or telling yourself to keep your shoulder blades back, but it's just that you've trained that pattern so many times that now you've ingrained that technique. So be more mindful of that, especially as you're pushing down, as well as on the eccentric portion. As you're coming up, don't allow yourself to elevate similarly. Just a couple things to keep in mind next time you're doing some push downs.